When Dead or Alive 2 was released in 1999, it was the sequel to the surprise hit Dead or Alive released in 1996. The whole concept of Dead or Alive was for it to be similar to Virtua Fighter, or to be something else unique unto itself at the same time. What resulted was later considered to be the tier of excellence that the franchise had with its original games, on its decline with those later versions of those games. But the speculative scenario is this: Dead or Alive 2 was the peak for the iconic franchise. Virtua Fighter was released in 1993 for the arcade, and later in 1994 for the Mega Drive, and Virtua Fighter 2 released for the arcade in 1994 and for the Saturn in 1995. These were the first examples of fighting games using the then new graphics for a video game, hence the name or title being Virtua Fighter. Tecmo, the developer of the Dead or Alive series, was in a financial situation where management for the company told employee Tomonobu Itagaki to devise a fighting game similar to Virtua Fighter, and what he later devised is now considered to be the Dead or Alive series. The term Dead or Alive was a literal reference to the company that if the game had failed, then they would all be dead. If the game had succeeded, then they would all be alive. Itagaki firmly believed that to difference Dead or Alive from the other fighting games of the early and mid-1990s, there needed to be clear differences that would have the particular brand of Tecmo be instantly different from the said competition, and to appeal to gamers with that said difference. From information now known, there was a strict balance between the violence or action depicted in the games, as well as the sexuality depicted within the games. This original and unique balance of Dead or Alive and Dead or Alive 2 in particular made them both instant classics. And this is where the praise to Itagaki and his team, which were later known as the original Team Ninja, came from. Theorists later speculated that one of the original mistakes of the Dead or Alive franchise was to have the installments from Dead or Alive 3 and Dead or Alive 4 to be Microsoft Xbox exclusives, as this alienated the original players for Dead or Alive and brought in a new scope of gamers, which later dominated the fan base for Dead or Alive. Itagaki did not necessarily have any control over this said decision, as it was a plot by Tecmo and Microsoft to give the Xbox an exclusive fighting game franchise, when the Xbox brand desperately needed serious titles to attract an initial base to buy and use the console. Dead or Alive 3 and Dead or Alive 4 were of mostly the same quality as Dead or Alive 1 and Dead or Alive 2, but there were clear changes as a result of the shift to a more Western gaming console-based focus. Released in 2003 was Dead or Alive Extreme, further expounding upon the depictions of sexuality by Itagaki. It later turned into an entire spin-off series of Dead or Alive with its own specialized lore on related characters. Events from the Extreme series are technically semi-canon to the original Dead or Alive games. This was intentionally done starting in Dead or Alive 5, which there was a clear shift from the philosophy of Dead or Alive established by Tomonobu Itagaki onto what was later seen with the modern Dead or Alive games. The player base of the Dead or Alive franchise slowly shifted with an emphasis on fan service on the depictions of the female characters within the games. Publicly, Team Ninja adjusted the focus of the Dead or Alive franchise to compensate for demand, and expanded the particular focus with the Extreme series on how the mainstream Dead or Alive games were slowly neglected by players, with a clear divisive opinion with Dead or Alive 6 but clear demand for the Extreme on Prism games. Rumors later had it that Itagaki personally hated what had become of the female characters he helped personally create and design, and Team Ninja were also divided with the sentiment about what the Dead or Alive franchise was turning into at the time. But there was a clear demand for the simulator method of games, and Tecmo enforced such policies. As a result of all that had occurred, the image for the Dead or Alive franchise would be forever changed from what it was originally devised to be until what it later became.